Welcome everyone to Ratioed. My name is Harrison Faulkner. Well, if any of you have spent any time on Twitter over the last few weeks, you've likely come across the trending hashtag #CanadaIsBroken. Mostly because these two keep going back and forth about it.
Everything feels broken. Oh, I just offended Justin Trudeau. He gets very angry when I talk about these problems.
Canada is not broken.
The reality is, most of us watching right now could go outside and could very quickly be confronted with the sad state of our country. Go for a stroll down your local big city street. Go for a stroll down your local grocery store aisle. Or just take a look at your bank account. Now, although things could be worse, as they could always be worse, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Canada we're living in is not the same Canada that gets sold around the world as a rosy paradise. Legacy media pollsters are now asking Canadians that same question, is Canada broken? And the polling results, if you haven't seen them already, may surprise you. Stick around, we've got legacy media polling results, legacy media news reports, video clips, and of course, back and forth between Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question, as you all could have guessed, is Canada broken? Let me know, and let's get into it. So take a look at the latest Leger polling results published in the National Post over the weekend. Here's the headline. 67% agree Canada is broken, and here's why. Canadians say their government is increasingly out of step with the issues that matter to them. The first time we heard the phrase, it was simply a great soundbite. Canada is broken. Months later, the hashtag count keeps climbing, and the phrase has become something of a battle cry. With all the noise, our team at Leger asked Canadians if the assertion resonates with them. We were somewhat taken aback to learn that 67% of Canadians agree with the statement. It feels like everything is broken in this country right now. It's one thing when a sentiment is a catchy sparring point between party leaders and pundits, but quite another when 2/3 of Canadians agree. So that is how two Leger pollsters summarize the data in a National Post article. But if you go to the poll itself, the data becomes a lot more interesting. There's a lot more here to break down. So here are the highlights of this survey. So 67% of Canadians agree with the statement made by a Canadian politician who stated that it feels like everything is broken in this country right now.
Do you ever feel like everything's broken in Canada?
50% of Canadians are angry with the way Canada is being managed today. 68% of Canadians report that rising costs and inflation or interest rates are most important when it comes to the issues impacting them and their families. And 37% of Canadians believe that the state of healthcare is the issue that governments and decision makers in their province are focused on the most. Now, these results do not spell good news for Justin Trudeau or the Liberals, in fact, quite the opposite. But it is important to mention that not all Canadians are taking these results at face value. A lot of Liberals are calling into question the methodology of the survey. And it is important to mention that this is not a poll, but rather a survey, and Leger describes the methodology this way. A web survey was conducted among 1,500 Canadians 18 years of age or older via Leger's online panel LEO. The data was collected from January 20th to 22nd, 2023, so just a week or two ago. Now, the methodology of the survey doesn't mean you can just cast aside the data and say it's not representative of where the country's at right now. Because if you were to look at other polling companies, you would see that they have the Conservatives pulling away from the Liberals. That to me would indicate that Canadians aren't so happy with where the country is headed. Nanos Research and Abacus data have the Conservatives pulling ahead of the Liberals by 8 points. Main Street Research and 338 both have the Conservatives up 4 points. But that didn't stop Mark Garrettson from embarrassing himself once again this week on Twitter with a hilarious self-own. Take a look at this. In response to Pierre Poilievre sharing the Leger survey results and slamming the Trudeau government, Mark Garrettson wrote this. "Hate to break it to you, buddy, but the National Post has been driving this narrative long before you decided to steal it." Then he takes a screenshot of a National Post article from 2020 with the headline, "Canada is broken, say majority of Canadians in poll taken in wake of rail blockades." Now, Mark here was unable to realize that what he's really publishing is that Canadians for many years have felt this country is broken, have felt that this government is leading them down the wrong path. Not just this year, but since 2020. Well, as you all could have guessed, the comments under Mark's swing and a miss at Pierre Poilievre are quite hilarious. Actually, we broke the country years before you brought it up. Mark, it is refreshing to see you participate in a crystal clear reflection and self-help. Transparency is rare these days. This isn't the burn you think it is, champ. At the end of last year, Justin Trudeau had simply had enough of Pierre Poilievre saying Canada was broken, and he decided to fire back, while speaking to a room full of Liberal MPs, Liberal staffers, and Liberal lobbyists.
Mr. Poilievre might choose to undermine our democracy by amplifying conspiracy theories. He might decide to run away from journalists when they ask him tough questions. That's how he brands himself, and that's his choice. But when he says that Canada is broken, that's where we draw the line. This is Canada. And in Canada, better is always possible, but I don't accept Canadians and politicians that talk down our country. Let me be very clear. But let me be very clear for the record. Canada is not broken.
And if you're Justin Trudeau, if you're a Liberal MP, that's all you really can do. All you can do these days is just keep repeating the line, Canada is not broken, while praying to God that Canadians aren't paying attention to out-of-control crime.
Yet another attack on the TTC is sending shockwaves throughout the city. This time, police say a suspect stabbed a woman in her 20s in the face and in the head while she was riding the subway, the streetcar this afternoon.
Rampant homelessness.
A longtime homeless advocate says he's never seen the situation so dire in the Fraser Valley. He says the number of people living on the streets and in camps has been increasing, and he expects it's only going to get worse.
An opioid epidemic stealing the lives of our young population.
2,272 British Columbians were killed by toxic drugs in 2022, slightly fewer than the record-breaking year before. First Nations people are dying at a rate 5 times higher than the total population.
Crumbling transportation infrastructure.
Rated #1 for all the wrong reasons. Canada recognized on the world stage for flight delays and cancellations. Good evening. Travelers call it a nightmare, forced to wait for hours, even days on end. Tonight, we're learning the situation here is among the worst in the world.
Unaffordable and out-of-reach housing prices.
This is a house in Toronto. It has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. It was listed for sale last summer for just shy of $1 million. If that seems like a lot, you should know that it sold for $800,000 more than that.
Grocery prices.
As sky-high grocery prices take a big bite out of shoppers' bank accounts, it appears more people are resorting to supermarket shoplifting.
Inflation.
Inflation in Canada has hit 8.1%, higher than at any time since 1983. But that rise in costs is not hitting everything everywhere at the same rate. Depending on what you're buying, you could be seeing costs increase much more than 8.1%.
Healthcare collapse.
Healthcare workers across the country are warning that our system is past the verge of collapse. In Ontario, 25 hospitals across the province were forced to close because of staffing shortages.
Depleted military.
Permanent residents can now apply to join the Canadian Armed Forces. This follows warnings from the Canadian Military Senior Command about staffing issues and overall readiness in the face of foreign conflicts and domestic disasters.
And a labor shortage.
The Business Council of Alberta says employers are having trouble filling positions across the board, from energy to agriculture, with labor shortages most acute in hospitality.
So as long as you aren't paying attention to any one of those issues, well, Canada's just perfect then. And that is exactly what Pierre Poilievre honed in on in his caucus speech last week.
Look around you. Crime is raging out of control in our streets. Our people are desperate that they'll have to lose their homes because of rising inflation and interest rates the government promised would never happen. People are losing loved ones at record rates to violent crime and drug overdoses. And families who've been locked down for 2 years because of COVID are now locked down at airports when they try to get away for a small vacation. Everything feels broken. Oh, I just offended Justin Trudeau. He gets very angry when I talk about these problems. He thinks that if we don't speak about them out loud, that Canadians will forget that they exist. He said this to me in a very angry speech right before Christmas, where he told 2,000 Liberal lobbyists and political staffers and consultants who'd paid $500 to listen to him speak that Canadians have never had it so good. And you know what? For the people in that room, he's absolutely right. They have never had it so good.
And just to show you how not broken Canada is, take a look at this video from a citizen journalist driving through downtown Vancouver. Pierre Poilievre called this hell on earth. You tell me how you would describe this video. Reminder to also let me know in the comments what you think. Is Canada broken? All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.